how to create a strategic plan, attempt it, execute it, see if it works. If it doesn't, how do you adjust? And so that's what we are teaching our students, is how to creatively problem solve, how to create the future.
We are always on time. That is what just came to me in this very present moment. And I'm grateful to be in this exact present moment with you. Welcome to the conversation, Sam. How's it going, my friend?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure. And in the most capable way we can via a Zoom recording. This is a great place to have it. And one day, I'm already putting it to intention. We're going to be able to sit down and have a
definitely
face-to-face conversation, do a similar version of this, but this is going to be good. So tell me, what is your intention for this conversation?
Great question. I'd say my intention for this conversation is just to be open, raw, authentic, self, share, whatever you feel called to jump into. I'm a vessel for, I would say, a lot of things, but more than anything, I'd say I'm a vessel for spirit. And I'd love to just delve into some of the things that I'm working on, but more so be able to share any insights I've found along the way that might be able to help others. But really, I think my intention is just to be as authentic and vulnerable and open as possible.
Heck yeah. Sweet. I'm piggyback off yours. It's kind of in the right space. I want to vacate a lot of the consistent chatter that likes to show up and really just create space for soul to arise, for the essence to kind of ride through, whether it's in questions or in listening or whatever it is. I know it's easy, especially in this format, with as long as it can be easy to kind of like trail off in thoughts and formulate things. I'm like, I want to be here with you. I want to be present and create space for whatever is to arise. That's what I'm pumped for. So, little background. You and I have really only spoken twice now. This is our second time ever talking at this point, but you and I connected through a friend, Angela, and
Yes.
She connected us regarding something that you were building, as I understood it, which was when she first brought it up to me. She said, "Hey, I know this. I've been working with this group, this organization, this company around this concept of divergent learning and the complexities that is that." And before we dive into that, because I want to seed it, I want to create a little bit of anticipation.
Sure.
I know you're doing some really amazing work with this divergent learning, this Divergent U. When I first heard it, I was like, ooh, I want to get under the hood a little bit of who you are and what has got you here in this moment, in this
Sure.
conversation where that is kind of building up to. So who is Sam?
Who is Sam? You want past, present, or future?
Well, you could start with your present and maybe the past builds into that.
Sure. Sam is a powerful, genuine, authentic, real, active, present soul that is here to support as many people as I can. It's hard for me to define myself, to be honest with you. Even the concept of divergent learning is like breaking away from a mold. And so like we actually had a question in our last class, which I'll probably delve into a little bit more, and I'll explain kind of the backstory of this as we get going, but I'm actually taking the class as a student right now. Mm-hmm. And one of the last question in the last class was like, what have you learned? And basically I said, I learned that I am not in one box. Everyone that I know will have a different definition of me, and that will always be ever changing, including my own definition of myself. So like, even like the question of who are you, to me is like, it's hard to identify a form because I am so many different things to so many different people. Ultimately, I think my role is usually a leader. I'm usually there to be a support to others. Leadership to me is a collaboration. It's not like a command. So I feel like I am a person with many relationships. I'm a person with many, I wouldn't even say hats, but many like forms that I think people see me in a lot of different ways. But ultimately, I think the view that I would aspire for most people to have, and I think a lot of people do have, is that I'm here to make a difference. I'm here to, like I said, support people, and not necessarily like support the most amount of people, but support the people that I can as deeply as I possibly can. So that is like what I'm called to do. There's a lot that I feel like I'm called to do in future tense. But present wise, I feel like I'm very divergent. The only word that I really like claim for myself that I feel like is, and even that is like, it's just a word, is a divergent leader. I lead in a very different way, and that's in my company, and that's in Divergent U. But I think who I am is an ever changing, person without a mask. I'm just real, raw, authentic. Sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's emotional. Some people told me I'm an emotional person, and I'm like openly hearted. I am emotional. Like I'll go there, but I'm also extremely strategic, and I'm extremely logical. And I think a lot of people think those two things, like emotion and logic, have to be pitted against each other in some way. But I think that we can be vulnerable, open beings, and still have like, I don't think those are opposites in any way. I think we all are emotional beings. I think we've been trained by society to hide that and to not show that because it's seen as a weakness. Specifically in men, it's seen as a weakness to be vulnerable or emotional. And so going off on a tangent there, but I feel like it is highly achievable to be both, and to be open with both, and not see that as a weakness. And so I think there's a lot of facets to who I am. And I think that gives a little bit of a gateway into the conversation, at least.
That's brilliant. Actually, we don't even need to jump right in immediate to the past. I know we said past and present leading to the past, but I have so much even just inside of that, which for one, you leading with this, I don't know if the word's transient, but more like this ability to shape and mold based off of the environment that you're in. Like what came present to my head as you were saying that was, oh, he in a way, and maybe I'm capturing this wrong, but he in a way is who I am is more about who I am in this moment. And who I am in this moment is dependent upon the type of leader that I need to be in this moment, because how I lead my family might be a little bit differently than how I lead my business versus how I lead a conversation inside of this conversation right here. Yeah. And I really appreciate that because it creates this malleability, right? This divergent thinking of, perhaps there are core things that I am, like I am love, I am collaboration, I am communication, but in this moment, who I am and who I'm choosing to be is a listener, or, and maybe it needs to shift, right? In some moments you need to be a little bit more, kind of what you pointed at, I think was like the masculine versus feminine, the directive versus the receiving, and not that feminine is specific to females and that masculine is specific to males. We both have it. We all have it. We all have both of it. And there are, more masculine females and there are more feminine males. Sure. And for you to kind of like express like, yeah, I'm both, like I have this emotional capacity, like that is in our nature who we are. And to be able to use our emotions, which are very potent driving forces if we allow them to be used for us versus trying to stuff them down, because this is the patriarchal way of masculinity, is we stuff it down and we just do and we strategize all the time versus creating space. Because as I'm sure being a father, as I believe a father, no, not a father yet. Not yet. Okay, but a husband.
Eventually. Not yet. Right?
You have a partner though. Mm-mm. What? Okay, so I'm just off base completely. You know what it was is when last time we spoke, you said you had family coming over.
Yes.
That's what tripped me up. I was just like, I swear he had a family. I was like, okay, that's what it is. So you have that. But in your world though, you're interacting with males, females all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Yeah. I would say that I'm a leader, a direct leader of 20 to 30 people, depending on how you define that. Probably more, honestly. Like there's a chance that it's more in the 50 to 100 range, but like
Yeah.
I don't really claim that. But I think there's a lot of people that I view me as a support.
Okay, this is good. So some of the things that you pointed at. So the who I am is this malleable thing, and you pointed at your role here is in its own right like leadership, and being able to bring forth really the best in others as I am kind of capturing it. And what I appreciate, something that I've been focusing on lately, is the importance of less with more intention. You said depth, right? Like I might not impact every single person or have this massive spread, but with the people that I do, it's going to be deep. And this is something that I appreciate and I'm taking to heart more recently, because for a little while I had this, I want to be like the Tony Robbins of youth. This was like a former thought, because I was doing like coaching for youth at that point. I was like, I'm going to be the Tony Robbins of youth. And then when I really got to it, I was just like, man, like that type of scale requires a particular lifestyle that isn't calling me. Like I require a depth. Like I would much rather have a smaller group, smaller close-knit group of community that I can thrive in and be playful and really understand the intricacies, versus knowing a million people with a certain shallowness, because you only have so much time, energy, and resources. And I'm curious, what has that be so important for you? Because that's not by accident.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot. Like I think my mission has been to innovate the education system. So like on a global scale, I'm looking at it as 100-year kind of plan. But I think the only way to reach that kind of scale is by going deep, is by taking the steps one at a time. Like I'm very like unhappy about the fact that we have to go online right now with our classes. But the world is what it is, and I have to adjust. But we have so much more depth in person, and online you can reach so many more people. And so that's like the business decision as to like, oh, you could scale quicker if you're online. I mean, to me, I'm not worried about scaling quicker. Like I'm worried about deeply affecting every single person that I'm interacting with. And not only like me impacting them, but allowing them to impact me. Because I think it's a give and a take. It's a receiving. Like to define leadership, because we didn't really go there yet. Leadership is a word that I feel like gets a lot of definitions that I don't necessarily agree with.
Mm-hmm.
I think leadership is seen as like this commanding type of figure in a lot of ways. To me, leadership is a relationship. And leadership is not something that I possess. It's something that I collaborate on. Like I bring my leadership and I expect the other person to bring theirs. So it's not that I'm leading them. It's that we're both in leadership with each other. And so like the way that I've been able to learn from my students has been like, I feel like I learn just as much as them as they learn from me, because we're both able to lead simultaneously. And I think that the best form of leadership is that collaborative leadership. Now you could have a leader of a mission, somebody who's like the decision maker. It's a different kind of way we could talk about leadership. And I've been, and I am in many seats of decision-making power. And that comes with that power and that authority. And that is very accurate. But I think it has to first come with the empathy piece. It has to first come with the people piece. I think about like in a business, management versus leadership. And I think both are important, but management is like the systems. It's like the goals. It's like the making sure the task gets finished. Leadership is watering the seed, and the seed is the people. The seed is the community, the culture. It's putting the people first. And so that's been like everything that I do in Divergent leadership, and the businesses that I work with and the students that I work with is all about this collaborative people first, culture first mindset. And that kind of rebounds into the depth, where when you hit people that deeply, when you create a culture that is something people haven't ever seen before and didn't even think was a reality, it expands, it grows, doesn't grow as quickly, but it grows more powerfully. It grows stronger because every single person is that deeply affected that they talk about it to other people on a deeper level. Like I'm sure Angela spoke on Divergent U on some level to you that made you curious. And I don't think that happens unless Angela is deeply affected. I don't think that happens unless our students, our facilitators, our staff are deeply affected. They don't go out of their way to talk about it in a positive way. And so I think that's how the scale is ultimately reached. But like I said, it's a 100-year mission to me. I'm signed up for life to be providing access to education of the world that we live in now and the world that we're going to continue to live in the future versus teaching people how to fit into the past and the history that exists. I think we're moving in a very different direction than where we've been. And so I am at the forefront of that in a lot of ways in what we're doing. And it's not even there yet. We're still in like the seed stage. We're still just watering the seed. And so that's kind of like where I'm at right now.
Yeah. I hear a lot of, I don't hear it. I feel, I can like feel the patience in you. Like, cause
thanks.
Here's the thing, like the outward, if you look out into the world and you were to Google search just about anything, you'll be hit with a million ads. You go on Instagram, you're going to be hit with a million ads for all of the things in your local area that you just happened to whisper about, and something happened to capture that analytic, and then somebody fed you an ad based off of what you were looking for. But there's not a lot going on in the world that is pointing a finger at and also addressing what is happening in education. Because as you said, our systems are based off of models that were created in the 1900s. And the past is a great source of wisdom. It's a great source of places. I mean, you go back even like, Plato, Socrates, like Ralph Waldo Emerson, like you can name the infinite number of people of the past who were great light bringers, if you will, people who shed light, who brought this timeless wisdom that will ring through the rest of time, right? Like people, you can look 1,000 years down the road, we'll still look back at Socrates and be like, yeah, that man was on some shit at his time. And inside of that still, there's something to be said about the importance of acknowledging it, learning from it, but not having it be the thing that is guiding our current decisions. Because if I were to take the way that I did a relationship in the past that did not end up well, by the way, I'm not with the person anymore, and to use that same foundation of everything to use that in a new relationship, it won't work. Sure, there are things I can learn, like, oh, you know what? I probably really need to focus on communication, or how could I have been? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that I mean, we talked a little bit about the 9 languages concept the last time we spoke, and I'm sure we'll probably get into it a little bit more. But one of the things on that concept is like the past neutral and the future neutral is history and strategy. And so if we get stuck in history, if we don't allow for new change, if we don't allow for new strategy, then we're halting progress. So we have to be able to say, yeah, history is important, but we have to be willing to step into strategy and say, what can we do that's new? What can we do that's innovative? What can we do that's different? And traditional education focuses on history. It focuses on what has been there. Some of it's present, like present neutral truth. You could talk like science is true. Math is true. But we don't do a lot of strategy. We don't teach a lot of creative problem solving. We don't teach people how to create something that's next. And in a world where everything moves so quickly, and where things that happened 10 years ago even are expired. And I think the most important skill set is learning how to learn, learning how to create, not how to learn what has been there, not how to like research a topic and Google something, how to create a strategic plan, attempt it, execute it, see if it works. If it doesn't, how do you adjust? And so that's what we are teaching our students, is how to creatively problem solve, how to create the future. And not like on some macro scale. It depends on their vision, depends on what they want to do. We have some students that are entrepreneurs. Most of our students are entrepreneurs. They're trying to start businesses. More than half of our fall class went from not running their own business, working for somebody else, to the end of the semester, running their own business and being a full-time entrepreneur. And so we help people to take that step. But we've also worked with one of our students from fall semester wants to be the president in 2036. Like that's her goal. And so I literally drove with her to Tallahassee and introduced her to our our state representative. And now she's working on her campaign. And so like things like that, where it's just,
crazy.
You have to attempt it. You have to try. You could say like, oh, this is my vision. How do I get there? You take the first step. You take the next step. You take the next step. And so that's not something you'd learn from history. That's something that you learn from making the attempt and trying it. And so what we're doing is not test taking. There's no like tests. There's no required assignments. It's all student driven, goal oriented. What do you want? How do we get there? But first, like I said in the beginning, putting people first, values are first. We don't sacrifice our values to reach our goals. We're not just here to achieve things. We're here to be the best versions of ourselves first. And in that, we're able to achieve what we want to achieve. And I'm sure I could delve way deeper into all that, but that's kind of what you were saying made me think of.
Yeah. And that's right there, that last bit about basically remembering the greatness within us. Cause I don't think it's something that we necessarily have to go and find. It's like somewhere out there, I'm great. It's like, no, somewhere in here, you're great.
Facts.
And the values are really what pull forth this like essence, right? This ability to go out into the world and do something, whether it's on a small scale, large scale. I think one of the things that I personally struggled with was the belief that if I wasn't doing something big, then I wasn't good enough. And there was a collapse. If it's not big and it's not massive, then it's not good enough, versus what I'm now taking on, which is small with depth, small with depth, small with depth. How do I, as you pointed out, like living from a place of values, living from that foundation, not chasing something externally and then dismissing everything internally in terms of that value system, whatever those core values are.
There's a simple framework that we have in one of our classes where we talk about that concept. And it's basically like, are you trying to go from point A to point B, where you're saying, I'm here and I got to get there. Happiness is there. Success is there. Best me is there. I'm trying to get from point A to point B, rather than seeing it. That's external growth focus. You're focusing on, I need this thing outside of me to be where I want to be. Mm-hmm. The internal growth focus would be, how do I make A grow? How do I make A bigger? And so it goes back to what I said about watering the seed. You have everything that you need. Just start to water what you care about. And so like, don't worry about, like, if you don't know what the end goal is, like, I think it's important to have goals. It's important to have direction. But if you don't know what that end goal is, what can you do? You can water the seeds of what's important to you now. If health is important to you, get that right. If, and I think obviously our physical and mental health is a foundation of nearly everything that we do in our lives, yet we see it as an afterthought. In most cases, we don't
an
see it as
extracurricular, like, maybe.
Right. It's my goals, my achievements, my this. And once I get there, then I'll worry about getting healthy. I don't know if it's the best strategy. I've tried it. I've attempted it. And I think it's better to put self first. I'm able to help so many more people when I put myself first, my health first. And that is, I don't know where I was going with all that, but the point A to point B, like growing instead of aiming for point B, you're focusing on A, which is you, which is now, which is present, and watering that and growing that. Because that's all you ever have, and it'll continue to grow, and then you'll surpass where B is, and you'll surpass where C is, and you'll build a lot of things rather than tunnel focusing on one. But I think both have value to them as strategies. I just think we neglect A and put all our value in B a lot of times.
Well, I mean, just as you pointed out, look at the education system: science, technology, E, which I can't remember, mathematics. Mm-hmm. Like in and of itself, engineering, every single one of those talks about something outside of ourselves. And again, not that that's not important, but how is it that simple health classes, simple psychology / understanding your freaking brain classes, simple things about nutrition, money, how are those electives? And some of them aren't even electives, like thinking like at a high school level. How are we not teaching fundamental core things to what it is to be a human being?
I have theories on this.
Oh, well, here we go.
Well, I think
I
think
in.
I don't have any like, well, I won't say I don't have any. I definitely have beef with the education system in some ways. But Same. it's not like, I've toned back a little bit on that because I've talked to a lot of educators, and they've given me perspectives that I feel have opened me up to a little bit more of what the education system is offering. I think what I see is a lot of it is people who've been through the system their whole lives, then go right back into the system to teach other people the system. And so we don't have nearly enough experts who've done the thing going back to teach it.
That's a good point.
And so a lot of it is teachers who were students who then became teachers. And that's most of our education system, is people who've been in the system from student directly into teacher and then carried that forward. And so they're teaching something that they learned, but they haven't done anything outside of that. And that's no fault to theirs. And I think that's something that I see as a reason for why that is. We've left money and health up to families to educate on. And it's straightforward. Like, to me, my biggest problem with college education, because that's where I focus my energy, is on the college level, and on the I believe our courses offer transformation on an even higher level than that. Most of our students are in like the 20 to 35 range, so it varies quite a bit. But I just think the speed in which we're learning and what we're learning and its application could be radically different. And so Divergent U is essentially 3 months. Our 12 limitations class is a 3-month class versus a 4-year class. And we've had multiple students say, I learned a lot more in 3 months at Divergent U than 4 years of college, because we're not telling them what to learn. We're giving them a framework on how to overcome limitations on what they want to learn. And so it's like, we're basically creating the container for, the limitations of time, of money. How do you deal with the limitation of money? How do you solve that problem? How do you solve the limitation of time so that you no longer have to say, I don't have enough time? How do you solve the limitation of connections? I don't know the right people. How do you solve the limitation of health? Starting with simple basics, growing A, not trying to get to B. Health is not over there. Health is here. How do I make health better? So like, there's a lot that we go into. It's 33 workshops. It's, 9 hours a week. So it's an investment of energy, but it's a significantly less investment than in college. And specifically for anybody who's an entrepreneur, it is, in my opinion, 10 times better than what you'll get at any college. And obviously I'm biased because I created it, but I'm taking the class because I believe in it that much. And it's the community, and it's the coaching, and it's the 40 minutes a week you get one-on-one with the facilitator. Now I'm just pitching at this point, but I believe in it so much. Like, I think it is the solution to so many of our problems in the education world. And it's complete now, because I've been building it for a year, and now it's finally at the stage of like, I can stand behind this confidently and say, this is the best. And that's how I view it.
Perfect. Can we discuss the 12 limitations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me give me 1 second. I'm going to grab the workbook.
Do it. Coming up next on the Follow the Wolf podcast, Sam takes us through the 12 limitations, and we are back.
So this is our workbook. It's 208 pages. This is our whole class. And so there's 33 workshops in this that we break down for our students. But I'll go through like each limitation kind of briefly. And then if there's any that you want to really delve into, you let me know.
Okay, perfect.
So we start with the limitation of beliefs. Do you believe it's possible? This is confidence. This is looking to the future and saying, can I achieve that? What can I achieve? How sure am I that I can achieve that? Am I sure I can't achieve more? Is there more I could do? And so we push the boundaries of what is possible. That is the very first beginning, is like, okay, these are what we believe is possible, but are we sure? Can we push beyond that? Let's really break that down. Why is that not achievable sooner? And what I've come to realize is pretty much everything is achievable. I haven't found something yet that somebody said that doesn't feel achievable. When you really sit with it and you ask it questions, meaning like you ask the idea or the goal, the questions of like, can this be possible? Rather than saying no, if you say yes, it can definitely be possible. Next question is how? Okay, let's brainstorm it. So when we have a problem like that, where it's like, I don't know how this could happen, open it up to the room. You sit in a room with 9 people and you say, how is this possible? Someone's going to have an idea. And it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's a classmate or if it doesn't matter. Someone will have an idea of where can we start with this. So like an example that we had in this semester, I was like, is there ever a time you can't? They're like, well, if you want to build $1 million company in like a month, then that's probably impossible. And I was like, sure, maybe. But what if you had 27 people on your team? Does that make it more possible? If you had 27 people working to build a company in a month, depends on what those 27 people are doing, right? So now we have to talk about what they could be doing. So, okay, so if we had the resources, then maybe we could do that. And it's like, well, how do you get to 27 people? Ooh, another question. How do we get 27 people? Let's talk about it. And so if that was your goal, I do believe you could build a plan to make it happen. I don't know. It goes back to why, though. What's the purpose? What's the value? Is it just because you want to make money, or are you actually, is this a mission that you care about, or a cause that you care about, or something that you actually care about? Because what I've noticed is when people align what they do with what is important to them, they stay dedicated and disciplined to it, and they actually achieve the results. Where the math may say, oh, you're going to make more money doing X, Y, or Z. It doesn't really work that way because we aren't math. We are people. And so math does not inspire me. I'm inspired by impact. I'm inspired by connection. I'm inspired by a lot of things, but I'm not inspired by math. And so like, it's cool to see a goal and see that you could make a lot of money doing something, but that's not necessarily what motivates us. From what I've seen at the students I've worked with. So belief is number one. Belief is, do I believe this is possible? And if not, let's push that and let's see how we can make it more possible. We'll take a student's goal. I know I'm sitting on this for a while, but we'll take a student's goal and 10x it and say, okay, so you want to make $1,000 a month doing what you're trying to do with this podcast. Was an example of one of our students in our first semester. He was trying to do podcasting and help people start podcasts. And he was like, well, I want to make $1,000 a month. I said, okay, why not 10? I don't even know how to do that. Well, let's talk about it. How much do you charge? Well, it's $350. Okay. So how many clients do you need to make 1,000? 3. Okay. So how many do you need to make 10,000? 30. Do you think it's possible to get 30 clients? Yeah. Okay. So that's 10,000. Okay. And so it's like, when you think about that, you can start to then change your aim, but it's totally based on what do you believe is possible? And a lot of times we start with what's available to me versus what is outside. It's the scarcity versus abundance mindset, which is another thing we delve into around, do I look at what I have and figure out how to best distribute it? Or do I look past what I have and figure out how to get it? And so that's like a big unlock for a lot of students. We do a really cool exercise on that one. But any thoughts on belief before I move past that?
Okay. So the 10X, that's all inside of belief, or is that step 2?
That's part of belief.
So 10X is inside of belief. So it's taking whatever idea that you have and then saying, okay, cool, this is great. How can we 10X that? And then it's basically getting them to, it would seem, and I could be wrong in this, but it's like getting them to the edge of where they believe it's possible and then saying, okay, cool. Now how can we go outside of ourselves and look around us and see what resources are available to achieve that? So as you pointed out, getting 27 people, on your own, probably not that it would be impossible, but you might go loony trying to figure it out. But if you have those people, now that becomes a possibility. But fundamentally at the core of it, you are pointing at the importance of belief, because whether, he who says he can and he who says he can, he who says he can are both usually right. Like Henry Ford's quote. And it's true, because if we don't believe that it's possible before we begin, we're not going to start, or we're not going to continue to do the work, which you also point out the importance of having a strong why, which we've already pointed at biologically, that the part of the brain that's associated with action and behavior is correlated with the part of the brain that connects the why. Why am I actually doing what I'm doing? Is it for the money or is it for the impact? So this is great. I think I'm following well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once you have the belief that it's possible, then the question is, well, what is stopping me? And that's the other 11 limitations that could be stopping you, right? And so now we believe it's possible, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. We've got to go through quite a few other steps to make it happen. So the second limitation is rules, the limitation of rules. What do the rules say? What does the government say? What are you allowed to do? And if we are working as a employee rather than an entrepreneur, then you have to worry about the rules of the company, rules of the business. What am I allowed to do in this role? What is not allowed in this role? There's a lot more rules you have to abide by. If you're operating as an entrepreneur, then you get to set a lot of those rules. And so what we talk about in rules is really understanding the overarching rules of how you can get paid. Meaning you can work for 3 different organizations. You can work for the government, you can work for a nonprofit, or you can work for a business. You can work for one of those 3, or you can start one of those 3. What I always say to my students, I don't recommend starting a government, but if that's the route you want to take, I will support you. But you can start a nonprofit, you can start a for-profit business, or you can work for one of those entities. So it's very important to understand how those are structured, because you're going to get paid from one of those organizations either way. So if you don't understand how they work, then you're going to be at a disadvantage, and you're not really going to know your real role. So whether that is as an employee or as an entrepreneur, we delve into like, what is the overall structure of a company look like? What are the different branches of that? And we do it on a macro scale first of like, this is, these are like the 14 key roles of any company. And then we pull it back in and say, this is how to start. If you're starting out or if you're in that early stage, here's like the 3 things you really need to think about and the 3 different ways that you can start your own business very logically, so that you understand like, okay, I can take this route, or this route. Which one resonates the most with me? Which one resonates the most with my idea? Because there's not a right way. There is your way. And so that's, again, Divergent U. It's not saying this is how you have to do it. This is saying, here's all of your options. What do you like? What resonates with you? So that is rules. That's the second limitation.
So belief, rules, understanding the name of the game, right? You've chosen a game. You've identified whether or not you believe you can. Now it's knowing the parameters. What can I not do?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then culture. Culture is number 3. Culture is the community around us, the voices around us. What are people around us doing? What are people around us saying? What are people around us telling us we should do or shouldn't do? Do they believe in us? Because I may believe in myself, but if everyone around me is saying that's a bad idea, don't do that, then that could definitely prevent me from doing it. Am I worried about the judgment of others? Am I worried about the perspective that others have on what I do? That can hold me back. If I'm not, if I'm worried about, if I fail, then they're going to judge me, rather than immersing yourself in a community that supports you. And that's really what Divergent U is. It's a culture of a small class of 9 people that is there, and not that's the one class, but then the overarching, community that we have too, of graduates and alumni and other classes. But having a community that is saying yes to every single idea you have. Yes, go for it. We're going to support you 100%. Yes, go for it. We're going to support you 100%. And so in that week, when we talk about culture, it's really about like, how do you find, how do you create, how do you change, how do you leave, how do you pick a culture that makes sense for you? And that's a hard step, because a lot of times you may be in a culture or a community that is not serving you. And, the encouragement there is maybe that's a conversation of, hey, this isn't working for me. And is there any way we can shift this dynamic? Because right now I don't feel supported. And that's the first conversation. If the answer to that is consistently no, then you have to make a decision. Am I going to stay in this community and accept it? Or am I going to leave? Or maybe I can stay in it and join others to still feel that support. But I love this person and I don't want to walk away, but I want to be a part of others that support me as well. And so like, that's where, we start to have more difficult conversations. But that's before we even get to like the limitation of money or time. Like, we got to really look at the community around you, the culture around you, because if they're telling you don't do this, it doesn't matter if you know how. It doesn't matter if you have the resources, because you're not being supported as a person. And so that's why those are the first 3. You have to believe it's possible. You have to understand the rules of the game, and you have to be supported by a community. You don't have to, but when you're supported by a community that is empowering and lifting you up, it absolutely changes the way you approach your ideas. Of everything that we do at Divergent U, I think that is the number one asset, is our culture, is our community, because we do not allow judgment in the space. And it gets vulnerable at times, where, everybody's allowed to share what they feel. And if anybody's judging others, we'll kick them out. Like, I'm not, and that hasn't happened because I think we attract the people that want to be in that type of space. But I'll defend that over everything else. Culture is first. And that's not the math, right? That's not the business system. That is the people. That is the culture. So it just reflects to everything we've been talking about that is the most important. But being in an incubator of people that believe in you, that encourage you, that support you, that give you resources, that give you connections, it opens so many doors to believing in yourself, to having confidence in yourself, and to actually being able to execute on it. So that's the third one.
Okay. So now we have belief, we have rules of the game, and now we have our community, which it's great. You pointed out the importance of protecting your space, because that really points at your values, right? It's if this environment, if the situation, be it a job, whatever it is, that environment doesn't support me, you have to ask those tough questions. Because the way I imagine it's either going to anchor you and hold you back, or you're going to cut those ties and do it alone. Or what I'm hearing is the third option, which is you surround yourself with people who are going to push you up. And that, to me, it's like together we stand, united we thrive. And there's always going to be more to go around when there's more people. And there's this interesting thing you said earlier about like scarcity versus abundant mindset, that on my own, I may not have it. However, when I go to community, I might say, I have this idea. I don't know what it's going to take, but someone drops an idea, and then that idea leads to someone else being like, oh yeah, actually I have something to contribute to that. Next thing you know, you have everything that you need, because you've decided to put yourself in an environment where people hear you, they're for you, and all they want for you is for you to win. And to me, I'm with you. I'm very clear that I've tried to do most of my journey by myself, because that's what I thought I had to do. And that the age-old wisdom of that it's lonely at the top. I think it's only lonely at the top if we don't decide to surround ourselves with the right people on the way up. And I don't want to be one of those people.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. And it's, as you can see already, like we're only 3 limitations in, and this is dense. Like there is a lot to this. And it's different than what you'd see in a traditional education. We're looking at rather than starting, we're looking at the boundaries. Like what is the very end of what is possible? And let's push that further. And that allows us to expand in all directions. But we have to see like what the 12 limitations do is it gives you a identification. What is holding me back? Which of these 12 is stopping me? Or how many of these 12 are stopping me? Number 4, clarity. Limitation of clarity. Do you know what you want? Do you know who you are? You can believe that you can achieve what you want. You can have the rules, you can have the community, but if you don't know what you want, if you're unclear about that, if you're unclear of where you're going or who you are, then it's very hard to make any progress, because you'll tend to just drift. You'll go one way and then you'll go the other way, but you don't have any consistency of clarity. And so we talk about like what are some frameworks on how to find that clarity. It really goes back to the divergent learning model that we created, which is basically starting with your values, then looking at your goals, and then creating your process. And so when the question is, what should I do? Well, do is process. Do is not values or goals. So let's go backwards. What should I do is a process, the attempt. What you should do is going to align with your values. So before we ask what you should do, we should say, who are you? What are your values? What's important to you? What matters to you? The only test we give our students is called a pulse test, which is something we created last year. And that's
sure they're alive.
It's basically like a pulse of their values, how they're doing with themselves. Mm-hmm. And so what they do is they choose the words. We say, how do you want to be? How do you want to feel? How do you want to operate? And words that come out of that are adjectives, things like, I want to feel happy. I want to be active. I want to be patient. When I laughed and you said, you could see my patience, because that's one of the words that I've always consistently put down. Like, I want to be patient, and I struggle with. Yet it's so that you acknowledge that it's like, ooh, I'm getting better at patience. Good. Somebody else sees it. But they pick their words. So it's, 10, 20 words of how do you want to be? And then we have them rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at in that word right now? And so this is starting with the values. So if I want to be free, if I want to be happy, and I rate myself at a 5, the question is then, well, what's holding that back from being higher? Let's deal with that first. Before we talk about what you should do, let's talk about that. And that's a process. And so what we've seen consistently in the data is our students come in with their pulse test at an average. It's different for every student. I don't know the exact numbers right now because we're finishing up a new semester, but it's about a 2-point increase on average for students overall. So like if their average is a 6.5, by the end of the class, their average is an 8.5. They're going from specifically, like, one to look at is confidence. We had students in one of our semesters go from an average of a 4.8 in confidence to an 8.8 on average increase by the end of the semester. And so what I've realized is by putting consistent focus into your values, it makes them more clear, and it forces you to really think about them consistently. Every week you're sitting with a one-on-one instructor, because it's not just the workshops, it's the coaching, and you're sitting with a person who's saying, how are you doing with your values? Week after week after week, you're just by measuring it, you are forced to think about it consistently. And so that's values first. Then we set our goals. So you know who you are. What do you want? Once you know what you want, then you can figure out what you should do. Because then you can say, this is who I am. This is what I want. How do I get there? Well, we're going to create that process. It's divergent. There's not a right process. Don't try to find the right. We're going to create a way, or we're going to find a way, but there's not a right way. There's never a right way to do almost anything in this life. Everything that we attempt, there is unique and creative solutions to do that. So,
there's no right way. There's only right for you.
Exactly. And so it's cool to see throughout the semester that truth becomes more and more evident, because everyone is doing something so different that you're just like, wow, like, I'm so unique. And so it gets emotional towards the end, because like we just had our last class. So like it's, we end with like everybody talking about what they learned from each other. And it's so empowering. It's so inspiring, because there's always some incredible things that come out of that, and usually tears. So it's powerful. But yeah, number 4 is clarity.
So just real quick, just to reiterate, that's a 3-month course.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but pull attention to the fact that you, as in your own right, a facilitator, a teacher, a mentor, that you have such an emotional passion for this. Because if I think just every single college course I've ever taken, barring a couple of professors here and there, minus a few professors here and there, I'll never think twice about the professors as somebody that I would like really want to stay connected to, not because they're bad people or anything wrong. It's just like that type of emotional connection wasn't there. It was just, here's the coursework, here's what you're going to do, pass or fail. And when I was in college, I didn't have some of the brighter ideas that I had now surrounding how I really could have used the people in my class to like alleviate some of like the stress and overthinking that I did all on my own. God, I wish I had known that when I was in college. But the fact that you have a group of people, that it would not surprise me if the majority of them knew each other by name.
It's not even like it's not even like that. That's like they know each other by name by week 2. It's like they know each other like real for real. Like we go, every single one of the students in my Monday, Wednesday, Friday night class has had conversations one-on-one with each other outside of class, every single one of them. And like we have a group chat, and like, one of them just landed a job, which was her goal for the semester. And she got 2 job offers on the last day of class, which is wild. But we all are like, going in on the group chat of like, yeah, great job. And like, it's lifelong bonds. Like, it's not just like knowing people by name, because it's only a class of 9 students. So you're sitting in these workshops, and the way it works is we start with a question. It's not, everything's questions. So we start with like the first class, the question is, what do you believe about goals? Pretty straightforward, interesting question. Everybody has a different perspective, and you're like, wait a minute, that's interesting. And so we start with a question, and then we get everyone's answer to it. And then we go into a framework, and we go into a discussion. And so like every class, you're hearing like my voice or the facilitator's voice, whether it's me or Angela or whoever, is only 20% of the conversation. Most of it's the students. Most of it's the people in the class that are discussing it. And so by the end of it, like you're in breakout sessions one-on-one where you're talking to people. You're in breakout sessions with groups of 3, and you're meeting 3 times a week. So it becomes pretty intimate pretty quickly because everybody, their goals, what they're trying to do, who they are. And you build lifelong bonds. And it's interesting to see how it translates even in classes that people weren't in your class. Like the crossover is like someone from our fall class is now collaborating with someone from our spring class. And like, there's just all these like loops where everybody seems to know everybody. And it's wild how that's, it's so inspiring to me to see like how they're still working together even after they've graduated. Like, I'm just like, I'm so proud of all of you. So it's really cool to see.
That's amazing. And it's that to me, there is this conscious and unconscious movement towards our tribal nature. I mean, in our very core, we are tribal in nature. And like, that's what's happening now as you're seeing these tribes, right? Different semesters now are connecting and they're saying, oh, like I can support you or you can support me. And you realize how good it feels to be able to give somebody or provide something to somebody that then has them go and do something that produces some kind of result that elates them, right? Like if I do something for you or vice versa, you do something for me, and then there's some tangible result. And then I come back to you like, dude, thank you so much for what you shared with me on, that, Wednesday night in that class. Like I just went and I landed that job and this is a job I've been dying to get. And now like, I'm going to be able to like go and move into this apart. Like that feels amazing. And again, like I can't help but point at, like I'll think about any college course I've ever taken. There might be a handful of people that I actually connected with and even fewer that I stayed in connection with. Like I connected more with some of the professors than I did with some of the students. That's really my own fault because it wasn't encouraged. Like nowhere in the curriculum to say, hey, by the way, leverage your class, like maybe create study groups, set up a WhatsApp.
It's so funny. When I go to talk to college students now, I will tell them, I was like, how much money does that class cost? Okay. So for you to get the value out of that, you need to be connecting to every person in that room. Think about this. Your value is not in the letter grade that you're going to get. That's not going to pay for the $1,200 or $2,300 class that you're paying, whatever it is, right? The cost of that class is not going to be covered by the test you take.
Absolutely
if you really want to get the value out of that, the only way to do that is to talk to the people next to you and to really get close with your professor. And I literally will stand up in front of a class and say, if you're not going to do that, I recommend you drop out because you're not going to get the value. Like I personally, my recommendation is I don't believe that it's worth the value that you're paying for it if you're not doing that. So if you want to stay here, it is valuable if you use the resources that are available to you. But if you're just sitting back and you're not paying attention and you're not connecting with anybody and you're in your bubble, just learn online. You don't need to be here. So that usually shakes them a little bit because they don't expect speakers to tell them to drop out.
Well, you have to, because if you can't rattle their automatic conditioning that's running in their brain, because it is just conditioning. Like this is not something that they've gotten to choose.
Another big one that I say that I feel like hits a lot of people is you're hiring your professors. It is not the other way around. Myself, as the president of Divergent U, I'm being hired by my students. It is my job to help them. It is not the other way around. It's not their job to impress me. It's my job to impress them. And so what I tell students is like, look, you are paying your professor's paycheck. You are hiring them to lead you to where you want to go. If you trust them in that, then continue to pay them. I'm going to apply for that job to say, I want to be in that leadership seat because I believe that I've created something that'll help you get there better than what exists. But you have the decision-making power over that. You decide where do you want to channel your money to put. What do you believe that person's going to get you to where you want to go? And remember, you are paying their paycheck, not the other way around. Like you are hiring them. So if they're not working for you in the way that is serving you, then I would look for other options. And I believe that our option is much more empowering and better, especially for entrepreneurs. For students that are trying to land, trying to be a doctor or a lawyer, then like, I don't think I can help with that personally. But for students who are wanting to work in a small business or start a small business, I think there's no better option.
Okay. So now we believe.
Yes.
We have rules for the game. We have our community. We have our culture. And now we are getting clarity around where it is that we want to go.
Yes. And so number five is motivation. Are we motivated? So we know what we want. We believe we can do it. We've got the culture to support us. We understand the rules. Are we motivated? How are we motivated? And so we'll look at like what motivates you. And for a lot of people, it is negative things. I'm motivated by stress. I'm motivated by fear, and I'm motivated by pain. And if I am consistently motivated by stress, fear, and pain, and that's the only way I get motivation, then I won't act until I'm in stress, fear, or pain. And so I am calling stress, fear, and pain into my life because those three things are the things that are motivating me. If I only get motivated when I'm extremely stressed, oh man, I really got to hit this deadline. Okay, let's do it. Then I won't act until it gets to the point of stress.
Eesh, yeah.
And so how do we shift our motivation from pain, stress, and fear? Well, those are fine motivators, but we don't want to just be motivated by that. I think it's fair to be motivated by those things. But how do we get motivated by faith, by joy, and by gratitude? Because if gratitude can motivate us, if joy can motivate us, if faith can motivate us, how are we stoppable? Because we can generate those ourselves by putting ourselves in environments or by doing activities that empower us. And so even if we don't have the faith, even if we don't have the joy, even if we don't have the gratitude, we can immerse ourselves in communities or be around people who do, which then lift us up to be in that space. And so it's learning, how do I get motivated by the joy? How do I get motivated by the gratitude? And learning the strategies around that, because if we're only motivated by those negative things, then it won't matter what you're doing. You're going to constantly fall back down to then stress, fear, pain. All right, now I'm motivated again. Oh, now I'm motivated again. But if you're motivated by this, it just rises. So that's kind of what we talk about in motivation.
I like that. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the importance of a choice. We're either going to make change in a state of empowerment or disempowerment, in a state of joy, of like you said, joy, gratitude, of appreciation, or we're going to do it from a state of stress and depression and anxiety. And either one you choose, you are in essence neurologically training yourself to say, oh, I can only get shit done when the test,
and there's that pressure on me.
The cumulative exam is tomorrow. And I have studied absolutely nothing. All right, well, I guess I'm pulling an all-nighter with a bunch of Red Bulls and, whatever else you need in order to get yourself to the preferred state of mind, if you will, to manage that, versus, as one should, like pacing it out over a period of time, like saying, okay, if it's going to take me 10 hours to prepare for this and I have 10 days, it's only an hour a day. Why would I do all of that the day before? And then you get to do it from a state of, like you said, more of an empowerment. Okay. So motivation, and really being able to do it from a space of motivation.
Yeah. And then number 6 is knowledge. You have to know how. How do I do it? How do I get there? If I don't know how to do it, a lot of us, when we say, well, I don't know, then we just stop. What do you do when you reach the I don't know statement? Do you say, okay, I quit, I don't know? Or do you say, I don't know, I'm going to figure out? Because we live in a world now where figuring out is pretty easy. When you don't know how to do something, you can YouTube it, you can Google it, you can ask people. And so the asking people is the part that we spend a little bit more time on, because the other two are pretty simple. But asking people for help is a challenge for a lot of people. How do you ask for support? Because a lot of us don't feel like we deserve support. A lot of us feel guilty asking for help. We feel like I'm not strong if I ask for help. I think asking for help is a leadership quality. I couldn't possibly be where I was alone. I couldn't possibly get to what I'm doing without such an amazing community. This workbook, it doesn't just have my name on it. This has Serena's name on it, because she was the one who created the workbook. Like, I created the curriculum, but she created this book. This book is a product of her. The fact that I can be more hands-off is now a product of the fact that Angela is a facilitator. Jess runs the business aspect. So like, she's the person who's running the numbers, making sure that we're staying on. Like, none of that's possible if I don't ask for support. And yeah, I provide something in return. It's an exchange, but I have to be willing to accept help in order for me to grow. And so we talk about, within the limitation of knowledge specifically, you may not know everything, but somebody does. Somebody knows what you need to know. And so you can either search it or you can ask. One of the exercises we do, we have our students post on their social media to say, hey, I could use some support in this new project. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I need. Does anybody know anyone that could help in that? And without fail, every single time they get feedback, usually they get exactly what they ask for. And it's wild to see how much that happens just by saying, hey, I could use some support right now. Because most of us don't do that. We don't say, hey, I could use support. Put a hand up and say, I could use help. When we do, we get that support. And so, and maybe not all the time, but it happens pretty quickly most of the time. So I think that's a skill that is worth developing as well.
Okay. So developing the knowledge, really the how it is that we are going to get where it is that we've pointed finger to. And again, you point at, and I think that this is just one of those things that we're going to have to really just be like, yeah, clearly this is a foundation for everything, is the importance of being able to leverage the resources around you. Because just like you pointed out, the second that you throw up a hand, that's when new possibilities become available. Because my mind is, I think it said that about 60 to 70% of all of our thoughts are the same as the day before. And that we really only have, we only have, and a lot of those are actually negative. Most of them are negative. And those all have an effect on us in a physiological level. But when you think about it, as soon as you get to another person, there is something that happens inside of somebody when you come to them and say, I could really use your help. Because all of a sudden, they might be going through some shit. But as soon as you say, I could really use you, they will become a superhero for you. They're like, you'll like blink and they're wearing a cape. You're like, whoa, where did Superman come from? Like, where did Wonder Woman come from? Like, it's just like that. And they're just generating these ideas that can give us what we need in terms of an opportunity. But it starts with having the how, and the how doesn't have to come from us. And that, I think, is great that you're pointing at the how. It can happen. It doesn't necessarily have to come from us. It could come from you. It could come from one of the other 8 members in the class.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's definitely a huge asset. It's just being able to ask, being able to see. And it's so interesting. We can't solve a problem. We're like, I can't figure this out. Ask somebody else. We have so much pride in like, I have to be the one to figure it out, versus anybody else could help me with this, but I'm not asking because I feel guilty getting support, or I have too much pride to ask. And so like, how do we work through those? Because again, this isn't just like how to build a business, like this is like really, how do I deal with the reality that I'm in and empower myself to become unlimited? And it's the hard work. Like, we're not doing like the easy, like, oh, here's a test, study for the test, memorize. No, this is hard work. This is like, you got to deal with the personal things. Like, what is my community? Assessing that, like all of those, what am I motivated by? Like really challenging your own thoughts and your own way of operating. And we put it in such a simple framework that makes it very digestible. So it's not intimidating. It's like, it's really easy. You just have to take the steps. It's a long process. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So we make it very, very simple, but it is still challenging. And it's just consistently showing up. If you just consistently show up, I always tell people, we do things very fast, very slow. So we're in 3 months going to get a lot done, but every single day will seem kind of slow. They'll be like, okay, interesting. Okay. You won't notice the progress until you get to the end. And then you'll be like, oh my gosh, wow, I grew a lot. But throughout, it's just like this slow transformation that happens piece by piece. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh my goodness. But that's the first 6 limitations. And that's very like, that is our first 4 weeks of class. Not every limitation has the same amount of time, because some of them don't need as much on them. But the first 4 weeks of class is those 6 limitations. And that's like really the foundation of the class. There's really 3 phases to the class. That's like phase 1. The second is strategy phase. And so this is like, all right, now we know who we are. We know what our goals are. We know where we're going. We know the rules. We can be motivated. We understand how to learn. Now let's get some strategy into this. And so that's where we address the limitations of time, of connections, and money. Those, which are the 3 that most people point to first. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough connections. But that starts from before. It starts with really looking at those other things first. And so limitation of time, like we look at, and one of the exercises that a lot of our students have found powerful is it's called time setting, which is where we are putting a timeline of 100 years, 30 years, 10 years, 3 years, 1 year, 1 quarter, 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, and reverse engineering that to reach a goal. So the exercise we do in class is, okay, you have a 3-year goal. It's got to be something ridiculous and radical. And you have to come up with a 3-year strategic plan, breaking down breaking down each year, and then breaking down from year 1 each quarter, and then breaking down from quarter 1 each month, and then breaking down from month 1 each week. And so it gives you this boom, big lens to like bring it really small. And like, it's not perfect, but they're able to do it in 20 minutes. And they realize, wow, I just built a 3-year plan for something that is ridiculous in 20 minutes.
And it probably doesn't seem that ridiculous once they've done that.
Exactly. And then we have them do it for themselves. So it's like a hypothetical exercise. And then the assignment in our workbook is now do that for you. And so like that approach to time. But then we also talk about the philosophical thoughts of time. Do you feel like your time is running out, or do you feel like your time is adding up? Do you feel like I have less and less time and I'm running out of time? Or do I feel like every minute, every hour, every day is extra credit and I can use it to however I want to use it? There's nothing I need to do at this time. I can spend it how I want to spend it. This time is for me. This time is given to me for a reason. Am I using it to pay it back, or am I using it to pay it forward? Like, what am I going to do with my time? And so I think a lot of us are looking at time as running out, and I see time as adding up. And I don't think there's a right answer to that, but to have the conversation is always interesting. So time gets kind of, and then we talk about how to create unlimited time. How do you make it so you never have to say, I don't have enough time? What are the strategies for that? And it seems pretty, like when you first think that, you're like, that's impossible, but it's not. My business works 200 hours a week. I don't work 200 hours a week, but my time that I oversee does, because I have people on my team. I can delegate. I can automate. I can quit the things that aren't serving me. I can reprioritize. And so what matters to me, I'll always be able to do, because it's my top priority. And so if it's not something I'm able to do, then I can delegate it. I can give it to somebody else. How do we do that? We got to have the money. So that's another limitation. But we can create unlimited time if we have the resources to do so. It is achievable to do that. There are plenty of people who oversee millions of hours of time to get things done. And, that is an achievable thing that we can accomplish if we attempt it. But we have to believe that can happen. So that's time, and there's quite a bit to it, but yeah.
Okay. So that's 7 is technically that's 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have time, money, people. So we now know at this point, so we've gone through 7 steps. So now the next step, is it people or is it money?
Connections. Yeah.
Connections is okay.
And that's 2 weeks. So we have a marketing week and we have a sales week. So we have a week on like building the relationships. This is like, how do I get to the person? Whether that is the employer, whether that is the client, whether that is the partner, how do I reach the person?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do I build a brand? How do I build a community? And how do I create consistent content? How do I create authentic content? So we talk about like all of that goes into marketing and actually building a business from a marketing standpoint. And then the sales week, which is still part of the connections, is like, the difference between marketing and sales. Marketing is generating the relationship. Sales is closing that into a transaction. Mm-hmm. So we talk about divergent sales versus convergent sales. Convergent sales is you're trying to get to one point. You're trying to get to the close. That is the goal of sales, is to close the sale. That is a convergent sales method. Everything is funneling towards this point of close. Divergent selling is the opposite. It is, we're starting with a relationship and we are expanding outward, and we are growing. We are watering the seed. Yet again, we're building that relationship. So my goal with the person I'm talking to isn't to close a sale. My goal is to support that person any way that I can, whether my resources weren't for them or somebody else I know's resources weren't for them. But if I'm a support to them and I help them expand and I expand my relationship with that person, that's only going to lead to good things. If I try to push them into a sale that's not right for them, that's going to hurt the relationship. They're going to walk away. And even if they don't become a client using the Divergent method, even if I don't close the sale, I still have that relationship, and they may know someone who's a good fit for what I offer. If I give them good advice or give input for what they need, they may do the same for me. And that relationship maintains. And the longer that relationship maintains, the more that it brings to you. So having a relationship for 1 year versus 10 years versus 20 years, it doesn't matter if we're so focused on every single conversation and like having the most. Again, it goes back to the depth. The building that relationship allows us to expand versus try to close. And so that's one thing we talk about in sales. And then we also do like practice selling. So we do like mock role play where we have people pitch each other using like a sales script over objections. Like, what are all the objections and how do we overcome those? And when should we not overcome those? When should we say, okay, this is actually not something they need. Okay, I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to push them to something they do need. So that's our whole connections, is both marketing and sales, which we spent really 2 weeks diving into the details on. And that applies to really entrepreneurs in a lot of ways. But it also applies to if you're trying to land a job, like to understand, how do you connect with the right person and how do you sell yourself? How do you build a relationship to sell yourself? So it's not just an entrepreneurship, but it is heavily focused on entrepreneurship. Although the principles have been applied to, like, we had a student who landed a job, went from a 7% response rate on job applications to over 75, and literally landed a job the day after he graduated and moved across the country. So he, using that method of using that relationship building rather than not going online and applying for a job, but reaching out to people on LinkedIn and other places and building relationships and then getting a job from that. So again, it's about connections. It's about who you know. The beauty is we can actually control who we know now because we have the internet. We can connect with virtually anyone. So it's goes pretty detailed on that.
Okay, so at this point now, they've been able to. The sales and marketing happens inside the connection. Like if you look at connection as the topic, which is step number 8, I believe, right at this point, inside of that is the marketing and sales of it, and going through those modules. Okay, but ultimately it's being able to develop those relationships, as you said, because it's not about a bunch with shallowness. It's about how can I really be so over there with the person that I can get them what they need, even if it's not with me.
I would say, like, how quickly can you get to 100 people that really support you, that you could call anytime and be like, hey, I could use some support, that will answer. How quickly can you get to 100? If you can get to 100 people that are in your corner, like really in your corner, it's really difficult to not achieve what you want to achieve, even at 100 people. And that's not that many. It sounds like a lot if you're at 5 or 10, but you can build those relationships day after day after day, and eventually you get there. So I think once you have that kind of network, I don't like the word network because it's surface level most of the time. I like the word community. When you have that kind of community, you're very supported. And the difference, to go back to the culture versus connections, because some people have gotten, well, what's the difference there? Why is connections limitation and culture limitation? Connections is like the who you know, right? That is like the skill sets around you, and what they can potentially pay you or hire you or all of those things. The culture is like the voices. It's like you should do this, you should do that, you shouldn't do that. It's the energy, the emotions. It's that's on the culture side, where the connections is like the transactions a little bit more, but you can still create a community from both spaces, but there's a little bit of a difference in what those are and how to utilize them.
Sounds more of like you're at home versus out in the world.
Yeah.
And although there can kind of be like a middle ground when you kind of like, because if I imagine if it's like your world, there's the outside world, and there's like this home world the homeworld can be, the culture can be like filtering into it. But
Yes.
you could, in theory, have people from your homeworld come into this community, your world. And you could also have people in the outer world, the people you develop those relationships with in your community, coming into your space as well. Like those, as you point out, those 100 people, those might be considered kind of like in your space. Like people like Angela and the other people that you work with, like they were at some point in your outside world. Now they're like in your space. They're part of your hub.
Yeah, exactly. So that's connections. And then 9 is money. How do we build systems that make money, which is a business? How do we build a system? How do we build a profitable system? What are the variables to building a profitable system? What are the things I should be thinking about when building a business to make it sustainable? What I've been een able to do is start from when I was 18 years old. I started my first business, Hoop Brothers. I haven't worked for anyone since then. That's been my full-time living since I was 18. And I started off as a side hustle. It was something I was doing on the side. I made like $2,000 the first year. Next year, I made like $20,000. Then I made like $75,000. Then I made over $150,000. We made $250,000. And so the way I was able to do that is by understanding the system of money, learning it as I went. It took me 8 years to build a system that made money without me. Because now I don't do anything with Hoop Brothers. I mean, I've had to because coronavirus. I had to step in and fix and adjust a lot of things, but now it's back stable. So I'm not in a position where I'm hands off. Business runs itself. I have managers that run it. And that's what allowed me to start Divergent U, was building that system. And so how do you create a system that makes money, that's profitable? And you got to put the right people. You got to be able to trust the right people. There's a lot of things that go into that. But what are the things you should pay attention to? What are the details that matter when it comes to building that system? So that's something that I've obviously been able to do for myself, but also I've helped, 50, 60 other people do at this point. So it's not me necessarily that's able to do that. It's the frameworks I've built that are able to do that. And so not only have I had the success, Angela's now had the success as a facilitator. And that was my biggest goal for this semester was I've been teaching all these classes. Is it me, or can I make this scalable beyond myself? Can I build a system that creates this? And that's what the 12 limitations is. It's a piece of me that I was like, okay, here we go. Let's put it outside of me. And now we have other people facilitating it, and they're getting even better results than me because I'm the creator. But honestly, I think I'm not the best coach. I think Angela's a better coach than me. And I told her that recently in our last couple of classes. Is I've learned from her as a facilitator and what she's been doing, because I'm taking her class as a student. Because while I've written all these frameworks and all this sounds like, oh, I know all this information, curriculum is not the value to me. The value is the community and the opportunity to reflect on myself. And so I spent this semester as a student going through this class that I created and answering the questions that we ask. The questions of what do you believe about goals? What is important to you? What are your values? Before this semester, I was putting my work before myself. I was putting myself on a pedestal and saying I am my work. I am Divergent U. I am Hoop Brothers. I am my TED Talk. Those are things that I would define myself on. That goes back to your first question of who are you? Now I am me. I am Sam, and I will always be Sam. And that's who I am. And I feel like I have been able to learn that and deeper, you can know that at surface value, but to really feel that transformation for myself going through the class as a student. I believe so much in what I'm doing that I'm taking the class, hiring somebody else to lead me through the class because it's helping me to grow on that level. And at this point, I'm like, man, I just want to keep being a student. It's going to be hard to not be a student because I grew so much. I want to do it again. And we're building another class that's the 9 languages, which we probably won't have too much time to get to, but
that'll be the follow-up. That'll be a follow-up conversation.
Yeah.
This is so rich.
Yeah. I told you, it goes really deep. And so money is building money systems, but also money mindset and feelings about money. How do we perceive money? Is money the root of all evil? Are we sure? Is there another way to look at it? So we look at how do we feel about money? When does money come with pain? When does money come with joy? How do we spend money? And so it definitely gets pretty complex. We're not just talking about just the systems. We're talking about like money itself and how do we perceive it and how do we work through that. So yeah, that's the ninth limitation is money.
We are 3/4 the way through. Okay. So, because I'm working on this thing. One of my practices is having better memory. So I'm walking myself through these steps. I'm like, okay, let's see how well I remember them. So first step is we got to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Second step is we got to know the rules of the game.
Yep.
Third step is, and I think I skipped one because I heard clarity. I was just like, wait, that's 4.
Culture.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, so third is culture. Fourth is clarity. Fifth is the motivation. Sixth is the how. What was the
knowledge.
The knowledge. 7th is our time. 8 is our people. It's our community. 9 is
connections.
Connections, not community, connections, which kind of bridges into that, but the word is connections. 8 is connections. 9 is money, which you've very eloquently pointed out. It's not just money in of itself, but it's the process of money. How do I go from making $2,000 in a year to, being able to, in essence, kind of not walk away from it, but like kind of take a step back, let other people step in, still be able to have that money and then step when I need to.
And that's financial freedom. And that's what we talk about is financial freedom is when your assets make more than your liabilities. Your expenses are less than the assets make you. And so at this point, I fell off of that because of the coronavirus and how that affected my business. But for the last 2 years, I've been financially free where I didn't need to work. I didn't have to. My business was making me enough money without me having to do anything to pay my living expenses. Now, I live very humbly and I don't have like super high expenses. So I'm not out here making $1 million, but I built a system that makes me money without me having to work. So I lost that system because a lot of it was live event based. So we've had to really pivot, but I know the skill set to do it. And I'm doing it again. And so I don't feel when it first hit, it was painful. I'm not going to lie. It was very challenging. It's been a challenging couple of months.
Yeah, I hear that.
But I now have the skill set, the knowledge and the understanding of how to build that system quickly. And so I can help people go from the 8 years it took me to 1 or 2 years that they'll be able to do it because I've done it and I've helped others do it and I refine it and it gets better and it gets better and it gets better. And so it's not about making $1 million. It's about doing what you enjoy and being happy and building that in a way that gives you the freedom on whatever level you want. Because as soon as I reached that freedom and I was like, hey, I got this. I was like, now what can I do? Now what can I give to the world? And so to me, Hoop Brothers was like, I achieved my finish line on some level. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that. I'm going to give it back. I'm going to push it back into the world. And I'm going to build something that can actually support even more people to do what I did, because that took me a long time. It took me a lot of effort. I made a lot of mistakes and I can minimize those mistakes for so many people. It's so interesting hearing my students now talk about like, I'm never going to work for somebody else again. Like I'm never going to trade my time for money again, because that doesn't seem like a good trade to me. And they're like, the fact that they're saying that to me, I'm like, man, that took me like 5 years to figure out and you got it in a month. Like, I'm so proud of you, but I'm also jealous. I'm like, whew, you don't realize how valuable you saying that is. Like, you don't realize how valuable that transformation is because you didn't take those sacrifices. You didn't do all that to get to that point. But at the same time, that's why I'm doing this. Like that's the point, is that they don't have to go through that. And I'm just grateful that I get to give that opportunity for people to feel that. And I feel it when they say things like that. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing this. It's for these people to be able to live lives of freedom and joy and doing what they love and not worrying what people think. But I went off on a tangent there.
But I mean, isn't that like what good parenting is, right? Like you've made the mistakes as a parent, and now you say, okay, like I want to help you to struggle less or in a different way that I had to, because we're all going to have our struggles, right? Like even them going through that course, they're going to save in just ridiculous amount of time, amount of money, fall downs, gets up, but then they'll have their own, right? So it's like in a way, the process of like evolution. It's like you've skipped these, but now you have these higher level ones. So you'll still have to go through it, but you've given them a platform that they can now start to create that freedom in a shorter period of time. Because ultimately it seems like that's what you're really for, is people getting that freedom in their life.
Yeah. It's all about, it's Divergent U, right? It's your choice. What do you want in life? And for a lot of our students, that is freedom. That is the ability to live a very free life. We also have a class where we talk about the difference between freedom and structure. Which do you prefer? Some people really want the structure and they operate better with structure. I personally operate better with chaos and freedom. And so there's not a right answer to that. Our students have leaned more in the freedom side, as that's typically who we attract. But we also help people to build structures. I mean, all of these are structures, they're frameworks on how to process the world. And they're all broken down, very detailed. So that's number 9. I'll keep moving. Number 10 is talent. So talent, do you have the skills? Are you talented at what you do? How do you practice? How do you get better? And so we talk about practice habits. We talk about, this is now the final leg of the class, so to speak, which is like the winding down and the closure. So like we've gone through the strategy, and those weeks are really heavy in like learning and getting new strategies and learning how to do things. And now these last 3 weeks are a little bit more about like the wrapping a bow on it and kind of like bringing the community together and all that. So like talent is, we talk about like, what do you have control over? What do you control and what don't you control? What is within your realm of ability to control? And how do you use that to practice and to get better? But also we talk about leadership. So you might not be talented enough. You may never be talented enough, but you can surround yourself with somebody who is. You can bring on the pieces of the people that have the talent that you don't, and you're going to be more successful if you are in a community of people who all bring different talents than if you try to be talented at everything.
Yeah.
So it's both. It's developing your talent, but also leading and surrounding yourself with others who are very talented at what they do. And so that's what we talk about in the talent section.
Okay. So the talent, would that be like another way, like really the skills that they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those words are interchangeable. I think a lot of people look at what's the difference between talent and skill. Like talent is innate, skill is developed. By talent, I simply mean the development of skill, the ability to perform a task. Are you able to do it? Are you capable of doing it? And whether or not that's innate or trained, it's still the same thing to me. It's the talent. Can you get it done?
Can you get it done regardless of where it came from?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe you start at a higher talent level, or maybe you start at a lower talent level, but you can always get better. And maybe there is a ceiling. Maybe you can't reach a certain point, but again, you can build a team around you who can help with that. So that's talent. And then number 11 is location. If you're confined to a specific location, that could limit us. That could hold us back. Where are you right now? And how can you maximize the resources, but also how can you leave? Are you sure that you need to be there? And that's a hard move for a lot of us, is to leave our hometown, leave our home place. Like for me, that's never felt like a limitation because I've moved like 20 times. So I've never felt limited to a physical place. But for a lot of people, that's a challenge. It's hard to walk away from where you are if it's holding you back, because there's probably a city that will empower you a lot more, a community that will empower you a lot more. How do you find that place and ultimately make that final move? So that's the limitation of location. But also, how do you use the resources that are available around you and the internet? How do we use, especially right now, we're all confined to a location. So we have to be creative. We have to find ways that we can do this in different ways online, because we are limited by the physical place. But that doesn't have to stop our mission. That doesn't have to stop what we're trying to do. It can, but it doesn't have to. Especially with the now connectedness that we have in the world. So that's number 11. And then the final one is health, the limitation of health. Are you physically and mentally healthy? And that goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, the A to B versus expanding A. Your health is not something to achieve. Your health is something that you have. You have health. If you are breathing, you are alive. You have health. So expanding upon that, whether you are terminally ill or extremely healthy, your baselines are still the same 4 things, which is your breath, your nutrition, your activity, and your rest. Doesn't matter. Every person has those same 4 necessary variables of their physical health. And so rather than trying to achieve health, we're looking at those 4 things. What's my breath? What's my nutrition? What is my activity? And what is my rest? And a lot of us forget about rest. A lot of us forget about nutrition. A lot of us, I think rest is the one that our culture is go, 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 go. But then we
time.
talk about, that's the physical health. And then we talk about mental health. And that is what we've been doing the whole semester, the pulse test, the going back and looking at your values and staying consistent proactively. That way mental health is not bad health. Mental health is not mental illness. Mental health is, you can be healthy. When we talk about physical health, we're not talking about, oh, physical health means you're injured. No, physical health means you're growing strength. Mental health, you're growing strength. It's the same thing. It's not just the bad. So what we've been doing the whole semester up to that point is strengthening the mental health by doing a pulse test every week, checking on your values. How are you doing? And improving upon it and improving upon it, improving upon it. It's a proactive tool that allows us to approach our mental health in a different way than just waiting for things to get bad, like we talked about in the motivation. And so it all kind of like ties together at the end. We have a class called the equation, which is like pulls all the variables into one clear equation of like, this is how to solve for you and your impact in the world. All of these tie together, and ultimately these are the only 12 things that can stop you. And you now have frameworks on how how you can overcome each. And so now you have the ability to be unlimited. You just have to figure out what is it that you want to do. And most of them have already figured that out by the end. And it's funny because the end of the semester is a starting point for a lot of people, where they like then launch into their next thing. So we close the semester with Divergent X, which is our graduation ceremony. And so all the students who want to give speeches, we allow to give speeches. They talk about their transformation. They talk about what they're doing now. And we do a creators expo that allows them to display what they do so that people in the community, the past graduates, the alumni, but the supporters, because we had like 70 people at our last event, they can display what they do and people can purchase things from them. People can do business with them. They can build relationships with them. And so it's this like expo. And they get to give inspiring speeches about what they did. And so it's a very, big project. It's a very big class. And I don't know if I've ever articulated it as much as we just did now. So I feel like that's a deep dive that I appreciate you going on with me.
Oh, dude, this has been so much fun. I actually, the entire time, was just like, man, this is inspiring, like truly inspiring. Like, and also I appreciate you being so willing and open to discuss it in depth, right? Like we just went through a lot. Like I think that conversation alone, if I had to guess, was like over an hour, like just going into the depths of it, just like, okay, great. So I'm gonna do my best. You're gonna correct me as I go. So we have first developed the belief. We know, okay, like I can do this, because in essence, it's, if you don't think you can, you won't go, but I know I can. I know how to play this game. I know the rules. Right now I have the culture, we're like the people who are like kind of like connected to us, kind of like closer to our home life. Then we have our clarity and knowing, okay, cool, like this is the kind of like the direction and everything. I have our motivation and what is ultimately inspiring the direction that we're going. Then we have the knowledge, I believe it is. Yep. Knowledge. Ooh, look at me. I'm actually staying up with it. Knowledge. So the knowledge, the know-how of how to actually get a thing done. Then we are heading into the time and really dealing with the limitation, the beliefs around time. Do we think we have enough time? Do we not think we have enough time? What is really connecting all of that? Once we've distinguished that, we're heading into the people, the I got this connections that we have. And this is, with ourselves as it pertains to the people, our environment, who can we connect to in order to continue working on, towards our goal, and also support people as well through our connections. How can we collaboratively connect one another, and not networking? As you said, it's more about the communal aspect, about being able to do this as not as I, but we. How can we collectively begin to elevate each other, which I think is so evident in your Divergent X, which I'm going to touch on at the end. But then from there, we have money, and dealing with our beliefs about money and how to create systems to where we can ultimately create that freedom. Because isn't that what it's all about, is to have more time that, yes, like we love what we're doing, but to be able to have more time with our family or with ourselves, or to take that vacation or whatever it is that's really calling us, but being able to create that financial freedom through this one. Then we have, I know this. I'm going to look, I'm cheating. Yes, the skills, the talent, developing the skills that are necessary in order to propel us towards that. And then being able to then handle our location, where we are, and does this support us? Does it nourish us? Or, does this include also if we need to like move to another location? Is that part of it as well?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. And then the final step is our health, and that is our physical as well as our emotional, or rather our mental. Or no, you didn't say mental, or you didn't say emotional, but you said physical and mental. Physical health or mental health, which included our let's see, I know there was rest. I know that there was breath. I know that there was diet. And I know that there was, you said like physical exercise or some kind of exercise.
Activity.
That's what it was. Yep. Activity. That's what it was. Okay. So we've gone through this journey now. We've come out the 3-month phase. We've developed our community. We've learned people by name. We've really started to take this idea and put into action and fruition. And now we're at our Divergent X. It's like our graduation of sorts. It's this expo. We're sharing our ideas with people, alumni from the previous classes, as well as people who end up showing up. And I honestly never heard of anything like that. And to me, that is so invaluable, because man, when somebody feels seen and they feel heard and they feel valued, to be able to give them a platform to really acknowledge, here's where I was before, right? We did our pulse test. Here's where I am now. And here's what I see as possible. That's special.
Yeah. It really is. And it's been like, it's such a good cap to the experience, because it gives the students a chance to stand up and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And it really it solidifies it. You go through this 3-month transformation, and then you stand up on a stage and you say, this is me. This is how I transformed. And we encourage our students to say, this is how you can do the same. And how you can do the same is not come to Divergent U. It's, this is what I learned at Divergent. I mean, you noticed how in this conversation, I didn't hold back anything. Like, I'll give away all the content that we do. Anybody who asks, like, I'm trying to put it out online. There's just so much of it that it takes time to produce it all and put it out for free. But I don't care about the information. I want people to have it, to use it and learn from it. And so our students will stand up and say, this is the exercise that changed me the most. So you do this on your own. They don't say, come to Divergent U. They say, use this information and go. Like, I tell them at the end, I'm like, this is yours. Give it to the world. Teach other people. Use it. It's not, I don't care. I'm not in this for the money. To me, this is I want people to use this information to better the world and better themselves. And seeing that we've now had 3 semesters of that. Tonight is Divergent X Volume 3. This is our 3rd graduation.
Congratulations.
So it's funny that we're talking today because that is tonight, and we're doing it online because we have to. But
virtual caps and gowns.
It's going to be I'm giving a speech, and I'm giving my student story. And the cool thing is Angela's running the event, so I'm not going to be as the face this time around. I get to just kind of because one of the reasons I took it as a student is I'm a leader in almost everything I do. And I wanted the chance to be a student. I wanted the chance to be immersed in a community where I wasn't the person that was leading. I wanted a chance to relax, sit back, and be a member rather than just the person out in front leading. And so now I'm going to be a Divergent U graduate. And that's really cool for me because I didn't go to my high school graduation for various reasons. And I didn't graduate college. I dropped out. And so this will be my first graduation.
Whoa, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
No, I so respect that. The fact that you created a platform, now you get to be a part of it, that to me shows me the heart and how much you believe in what you're doing. This isn't, you say it. It's one thing to say something, but it's another thing. Again, I can hear your words. It's like the Maya Angelou was saying, it's they'll forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, or maybe it was that, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And how you're leaving me feeling right now, it's I believe what you're saying. I believe. And then you're yeah, take this work, but go and do with it what you will share it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. There's this interesting thing that is such a commitment to an abundance mindset where you say, I'm not worried about somebody else having this outside of the course, because I know whether you haven't verbalized this to yourself, but in my mind, I'm you taking that approach is what is going to have it be successful. And you're committed, you said patience, committed to the long game, and knowing that me being this way is exactly what's going to cultivate the type of community and the type of people that I want, which goes to the very beginning of our conversation about values and knowing am I doing it for the money, or am I doing it because something inside of me and what matters to me? And I can't thank you enough for being a leader that's willing to also then go into his own course and say, I believe in this so much, I'm willing to do it, and it's impacting my life.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's definitely been a journey, and it was not the journey I signed up for at the beginning of the semester, because coronavirus hit, and I had to then go into superhero mode of like, I got to pick up the pieces of one broken business. I got to take a class that was not meant to be online. And I felt like with the support of my team, like we did a really, really good job of everything. Like we stabilized Hoop Brothers. We got the online classes going on Divergent U with multiple iterations. Like the beginning, I was shooting videos, and then I was like, the videos don't capture the experience the same way. We've got to do it. We can't just like present the information and then talk about it. We've got to do it class format. So we changed it midway through. We changed it to go online when it wasn't meant to be online. And then midway through the online, I changed it again because I was like, this isn't where I want it to be. So like we've been pivoting throughout. And like this is now the culmination of like 3 semesters of work. And even this book is now a little bit old because we've updated, we adjust, we grow it. And so it started with me going into my cocoon saying, what have I learned? It started with 6 limitations. I was like, there's 6 things that could possibly hold you back. Someone was like, what about health? It's like, that's true. What about talent? Oh, that's also true. What about location? I didn't think of that. So like, this wasn't all just my ideas. This was, everybody brought something to this. And it's been now hundreds of people that have seen it, not hundreds of people who've taken the class yet. We have 35 total graduates, but hundreds of people who've seen it. And I haven't been challenged on like, there's more than 12. Like those are the 12. Like that's what holds you back. If you believe it, if you have the rules in place, if you have the culture in place, if you have the motivation, if you have the knowledge, if you have the clarity, if you have the money, the time, the connections, the talent, the location, the health, what can stop you? And each of those can be achieved. Each of those can be pushed. And so the fact that that's true means we can't be limited. We can be limited in a time standpoint. Like I have 100-year goal. I'm not going to achieve that tomorrow. But if I look at the mission as greater than me, I know the mission can be achieved even if I die. Like if I pass away in 2 years, I can't pass away yet because I haven't gotten this fully off my
plate. Not yet, please. Whatever.
Give me a little bit more time.
Whatever is operating all of this, please just give me a little more time.
But if it's, if it's in 2 years when I have the 12 limitations and the 9 languages self-sufficient running themselves, the mission's going to be achieved, whether it's me or somebody else doing it. Like that's what I care about. I'm just a vessel. I am just the person who's carrying it out. And so that's why, like when we started, I was talking about my intention is let spirit speak through me, because that's all this ever is. It's just I am a vessel for something greater. Like I've seen the problem of what is in education. I've seen, and some people don't see it as a problem, and I respect that. But I think that there are a lot of things that we can be doing that are better. And I'm going to innovate and I'm going to push that because I'm capable. And it's like that, Spider-Man, great power comes great responsibility kind of thing. I feel like I have great power. I have the ability to impact myself and others. Like I can, and the more I've seen it, the more I'm realizing like I can actually do pretty much anything I want to do. And that's a scary realization to see, like, I can do anything. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
That's a lot of like, so how am I going to use that power? What am I going to do with that power? I could use it to manipulate people, or I could use it to empower people. And to me, like, why would I use it to manipulate people? Like, what do I possibly need? What would I want to take from others that I don't already have? Like, if I can be unlimited now, like if I have that power now, what would using it to oppress do? What would that do for me? Like oppression. And that's one thing I speak out against a lot. And I'm, going on a little bit of a different path with this, but oppression doesn't make sense. It's not a logical idea. It doesn't make sense to push other people down. It doesn't make sense to try to climb this ladder to get to a singular point at the top. Like there is not a singular point at the top. We all can be powerful. We all can be impactful. We all can be unlimited. And so many people think they have to limit others to empower themselves. I'm like, the data from my life doesn't add up to that. it adds up to the more we share, the more we empower, the more power we give, the more we have power, the more we can spread power, the more we can be unlimited. And it's a tool that can be used for such good in the world. And so that is, why I feel like I'm here, is to spread that and share that and do my part in putting us forward in the next chapter of what the world has. And so that is, that's what I'm about.
Who am I? I am all of that and more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we didn't even talk about the fact that I write poetry, I write raps. Hoop Brothers, we didn't talk about at all. We didn't talk about the 9 languages. There's so many facets to who I am and what I do that, like, it will never be fully captured. And I've tried so hard because, like, I do a rabbit hole series that I wrote on my Facebook page, which is like, it's 70 episodes of deep dives. They're like blog posts, basically. And I deep dive into so many different topics. I talk about God. I talk about vices. I share vulnerabilities. I talk about money. I talk about feminism. I talk about oppression. I talk about everything. And so, like, I go real deep into different concepts on that. And that series ended with me talking about, I feel like I'm adding too much to this conversation now, but
it's always going exactly where it's supposed to.
The last one was about death, and like the bottom of the rabbit hole is death. And the question is life meaningful? Does life matter? And the answer is yes. Yes, life is meaningful. Life matters. I've stood in the face of some dark thoughts from others, like suicidal thoughts, and I've stood with them and not been afraid of their thoughts. I was like, I'm willing to go there with you. Like, I'm willing to go to the dark places. I'm not afraid. And like, I've stood in that and been like, no, like, life is meaningful. This is not like, and not to judge it, not to say like, oh, you can't have those thoughts. Those are bad thoughts. No thoughts are bad thoughts. You can have the thoughts. It's okay to have the thoughts, but like, allow yourself to really sit with those thoughts. Like, are you sure? Are you sure life doesn't matter? Because that doesn't seem like, spiritually, if you're at all spiritual, then I don't agree. But if you're not spiritual, let's go there. Science, nature. Do trees kill themselves? Do frogs kill themselves? Like, it doesn't make sense. And it's not like life matters. It's very meaningful. And I know that went a little bit different direction, but to me, like, life is just, it's a meaningful thing that we have. And I don't see it as running out. I see it as adding up. I see it as, I'm going to celebrate every moment, every day, every minute, every hour, because why not? Like, why not? What would hold me back from that? Like, I'm minimal, and like, who am I to talk? I think some people could say I minimalized my whole life. I was literally 2 months ago, I took out all of my furniture. I took out everything that didn't feel like me. I didn't have a dining room table. I didn't have a couch. All I had was this chair that I'm sitting in and my TV and things to cook with. Like, my car is not a great car. Like, I don't care about those things. I intentionally took everything out of my life to see, can I be at the bottom and still feel like life is meaningful? And yeah, I actually felt like life was more meaningful to that when I got to that point. And now I'm adding things back to my life, and everything I add is meaningful. And so I went to that like minimalistic place. I had 6 or 7 pairs of clothes, like, 4 pairs of shoes. Like, that was like, I got to the very core of like, I had a tally on everything I owned, to the movies that I had, to the books. I went to the very, very core of like, okay, if I take everything away, what's left? Me. That's what's left. And now I want me to expand and I want me to grow. And so now I've been adding more to my life because that was the completion of a journey. But again, now I'm just going on a million tangents.
No, this is actually really great. I was listening to a conversation, a podcast with Aubrey Marcus and Kyle Kingsbury, where they were talking about the importance of detoxing, and not necessarily just food, but detoxing as a means to go to a far extreme, and how the importance of knowing and understanding both extremes, because it's in the middle of those extremes where we find our path, right? So if I decide I'm going to do a sugar detox, I remove all sugar from my diet, or I do a house detox, I remove everything. I remove all of my furniture, I remove all of my clothing, all of my movies and everything, right? I remove all of it, and I say, okay, now what is left? How do I feel? And then once I've been with that, as you so clearly pointed out, now I can actually start to add things, but it comes back with a more meaningful intention, right? So what I'm adding is, in their example, they were talking about carbs. They said, I removed all carbs. And then I went to the other side of the spectrum and I ate all the carbs. And I figured out that in eating all the carbs, I figured out which ones were especially bad for me. Like I found out specifically, like this carb adds a lot of inflammation. I enjoy it, but I'm only going to have it very, very finite amount because I know that it's not good for me. So what you're pointing at, I think is great, because much like how every single thing that we're going through is it's a birth and a death cycle all the time, right? The sun rises, the sun goes down, the moon rises, the moon goes down. It's all a birth and a death. Matter of fact, our conversation is a birth and a death, right? We had our arc, we talked about the 12, and now you just natural that you bring up the conversation of death. And in this death, there's this cyclical nature of life, and being able to go into that space and still find that you have this overwhelming sense of peace. That isn't that perhaps one of the great journeys of life, is being able to find that no matter what I have or don't have, I still have myself. And it sounds like you dived into that.
Yeah. And what I always say is true peace cannot be disturbed. So if you're in peace, it doesn't matter what is around you. You can't be disturbed by anything if you're at true peace. If you can be disturbed, then you're not at true peace. So true peace cannot be disturbed. It doesn't matter what's going on around me. Like I said, like, you know, talking to somebody who's at that dark place, like I didn't let that disturb my peace. I sat with them and I listened and I was there and I said very little and I just listened for hours. But not in a way of like judgment or like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or that's a bad thought. It's just like, that's a thought that you have. And that is okay. I don't value you less as a person for that thought. That is a fair thought to have if that's what you have. But let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Are we sure? Let's see. Like, let's really go there. But more so doing that by listening and by holding space. I think something I was going to mention earlier on is like leadership to me is holding space. It's just as simple as like holding space for another person to be themselves. And what Divergent U is a space that I created that holds space for people to be themselves at their purest and best and rawest and most vulnerable form, where they can be that around other people who are being that. And when you go through that, you come out a different person, because most people have never experienced that. Most people have never experienced being able to truly be themselves around others. And when you do that and everybody takes off their masks and they realize like, oh, we're all people and like, this is okay to be a person. It's very, very hard to go back. It's very, very hard to put it back on, because then you're like, well, these people accept me and they're all way different than me. So other people will accept me too, because this isn't the only class. There's other class. There's a lot of these people. Oh wait, this is everybody. Everybody's different. Everybody's human. Everybody feels pain. Everybody feels joy. Everybody feels stress. And so that's why I say I'm openly an emotional person, because we all are. We all are vulnerable. We all have pain. We all have fear. Some of us hide it, and we do it because we think it protects us. And I think in many cases it might. I think some people are in potentially legitimate dangerous situations where sharing those thoughts could be painful to their experience. And I respect that. But there's another way. There is another way to live this life around people that are actually empowering you, around doing what you actually love. I just want to be a bridge to that as much as I possibly can. So I thank you for this opportunity, because I feel like this conversation could certainly help a lot of people. And again, I appreciate the opportunity.
It's not by chance that we're here. You know, a lot of things had to happen, including me going to Hostel in the Forest, meeting Angela, and then time later realizing, oh, I want to reach out to Angela for a podcast. And then she gets on and she's like, yeah, I have someone I want to connect you with. I imagine that the person who's facilitating a class, like, I have someone I want to connect you with. And here we are having this conversation. All of it, all led up to this exact moment in time. I'm grateful that all of the infinite timelines that exist collapsed right here into this moment. And the thing that I'm left with, amongst a lot of things that you've said, a lot of things that you've said, but the thing that I'm left with right at the end, at least this is what I deduced from it. Maybe it's because I have a filter, don't we all? But my filter brought forth was really what this is all about is living truth, being embodied living truth, right?
Yes.
The removal of the mask. Hence, in such a perfect seed at the center of your nine, what did you call them?
9 languages.
The center of your 9 languages is truth. And that was the thing. When you showed me that board, I said, look at that. Look at right is at the center of it, truth. And this entire mission, this entire movement is about truth. It's about finding that truth. Because when you can find your people, you can find that truth within yourself, and you can take that into the world. And perhaps in the face of, perhaps uncertainty and fearful situations, whatever, but to live, I knew that was going to happen one day. And here it is. The veil has been removed. This is perfect. And I'm so glad this happened. The truth, the veil has been removed. Revealed, and here we are. This is great. And that's not getting edited out either. See, truth is revealed, the veil is removed. This is all a part of my speech now. This is all part of my closing speech. When the truth is revealed and the veil is removed and the mask comes down, you see the essence of a person. I think that to me, that's love. And that's what this is all about.
That was beautiful.
You make do with what you got.
The fact that you're talking about this is truth, this is how it is, and then boom, that's hilarious.
You can't make that up. You can't make that up. And if you're listening to the audio of this, I encourage you, if you don't watch the whole video, just watch the last, little bit of it and watch what just happened. Cause it was really perfect. Honestly, it creates such an imagery, but yeah, man, thank you. Thank you so much for this. And if people are wanting to get connected with you and they connected, what's a good way for that to happen?
So I'm kind of doing a digital cleansing right now. I don't know when this will be posted, so probably I'll be back online by the time this is posted. But the best place is either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. And it's just my name, Sam Tarell, SamTarell, on all platforms. But Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, probably the best places. Probably Instagram more than others. To if you're trying to message me, I'm always open to conversation. Like my inbox is wide open, and I'm willing to go there. I can't respond right away all the time because I get a lot, but I think as soon as I can, I'll always get back to anybody who has any thoughts, needs advice, is interested in Divergent U. You can also go to Divergent U's website. It's divergent-u.com, and look at the classes we offer in a little bit more detail. You can see every single one of our students' stories. We don't hold any of them back. It's all authentically out there. You can see first semester, second semester, third semester, every student that went through the class, what their journey was, their speech, their story. It is all public. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, definitely check it out. I believe that the class that we offer is the best class in the world on transforming your life and doing what you want to do for a living. So if you are interested in expanding upon what you do from an entrepreneurial standpoint, especially, I highly recommend reaching out because I'm 100% confident that I can help you, and that the community we have can be an amazing support to what you do. So if any of that interests you, please reach out. Or if you thought any of this was just fascinating and you want to get more of my perspectives on it, I would love to chat when I have the time. So thank you.
Swiggity sweet. Sam, it's been such a pleasure. Again, I can't thank you enough for cutting the time out of your life. I know you got a crazy busy schedule, but thank you for being here, friend.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. And for those of you listening, as I mentioned earlier, and as we always mention, thank you. If you've made it this far, this was a good one. This was definitely a good and long one, but we dived deep. We dived really deep. Actually, this is one thing I forgot to mention. One thing out of everything that we've covered, what is one thing that a person can take right now and begin to have that transformation start to occur in their life if they get nothing else? This one thing that they can do.
Sure. This isn't even something we talked about necessarily, but priorities. Write your list. What is the most important to you? What is your list of priorities? Rank them. Number one, this is most important to me. For me, number one is my relationship with spirit. Number two is my relationship with myself. So that's my mind, body, spirit, physical, mental health. Then it's my relationship with the immediate people around me. Then it's my work. Then it's, fill in the blanks. But I would say make a list of your priorities. What is actually most important to you? And are you upholding that as a true list? Or are you sacrificing what's most important for you to impress others, or to uphold an image, or because you feel like you're supposed to? Look at your life and really set, like, these are my priorities. This is what's most important to me. Make that list and then compare it to where you're at right now and say, do I need to make a change, or am I happy with where I'm at? And so that's what I would recommend, is make that list of like, what is actually meaningful to me and important to me, because we have an infinite amount of places we can put our energy. And if you're not aware or prioritizing of that energy, then it gets dispersed without your control or without your say so. And there's just so many ways that it could get pulled without you being intentional and mindful of it, that it's really important to create that priority list of what is the most important to you, so that you can start from there and then expand from that. That would be my one piece of advice.
So if that were a tangible practice, would you say like set a 10-minute timer, list out the domains that we exist in, whether it's our relationships, our health, our work, and just taking a number to each of them, saying, okay, this is number one, this is number two?
I would start with number one. I would say, instead of listing all the things, like, start from zero and say, okay, if there was one thing that is the most important thing to me in the world, what is it? Where do I want to start? And my recommendation is starting with like spirit, starting with self. But that's just my perspective. And I don't believe that my perspective is the right perspective. That's what's worked for me. What's worked for me has been putting meditation, spirituality, prayer first, and then health second. That's been my priority list. But I would look at, for you, what is most important. I think it's logical that health should be a top priority, because that allows everything else to function. But if you have another perspective on that, I'm not going to tell you that that's how it should be. But think about it. Think about it for yourself. What is most important to you in the world? What is number one? And that could be defined in any way you want to define it. It doesn't have to be put into a box. Your priority list is yours. And so there are a lot of ways you could go about creating that priority list and create different boxes, but there's not a right way to do it. So I think start with what's number one most important. What is the thing that I will never sacrifice, that will take priority over everything else? Cool. Now what's number two? Is number two, or is maybe number two number one? Okay, number two is number two. Number three. Actually, you know what? Number threes actually should be number one. I forgot about number three. So like, go one at a time, add them until you run out. Like, to me, I think you get to like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you probably won't have many more after that. And it just depends on how you want to organize it. Do you want to have just 5? Do you want to have 10? Do you want to have 3? But think about that. And I would just start with what is most important to me and most meaningful to me, and kind of go from there.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'd almost forgotten. I was just like, wait. No, I really want to get that. Okay, perfect. So take a list, make the priorities, make that a priority, to make those things a priority, because then we can live from that, versus it kind of being just random, like you said, not knowing where the energy goes.
Exactly.
So that's a good one. Take that with you. And as always, thank you for your time, for your listening, for your energy. All of it I'm just grateful. I'm so grateful for. And as always, continue to find, follow, and live your truth, and follow the wolf within you. How? Peace. Thank you so much for listening in. If you got value out of this message, we would love it if you subscribed and shared it with your tribe, so we can continue to share this message and this medicine with people all over the world. Much love and peace be with you.